All right, so Arsenal losing 2-0 to West Ham at the Emirates. Emmanuel, let me bring you in. Thank you so much for joining us. Arsenal are going to take on Fulham. Fulham are one of the few teams to have come to the Emirates in the first half of the season and walk away with the points. I remember they drew that game 2-2.
I think they even took the lead.
Yes, Joao Palhinha scored. And now Arsenal, they've lost this game. Now they have to go to... What do they do? Because Fulham can be very crazy. They can be very tricky to handle.
Well, I do think they need to take their chances. With the highlights we just saw, it's not for a lack of creation that they lost that game. Just in the first half, I think Saka had 2 or 3 chances, which if he had scored, it changed the fortunes of this game. But it's a win or loss business. If you don't score, the opponent scores, they win. And even with the preview to this game, which I think we did on radio, we all knew how these teams were going to set up. West Ham were going to be very difficult to play against. And if you watch how they played within the width of the 18-yard box and only engaged Arsenal when they came out wide. And I do not understand why Arsenal were still trying to go wide, bringing more wide men. You look at the substitutions they brought in. You brought in Smith, Rowe, Reece, and they were all going wide. And they should have tried to penetrate,
Could it not be that maybe Mikel Arteta thought the central area is clogged, so go wide, try and pull West Ham?
It was clearly not working because if you look at the chances they created, even in the second half, so the Jesus chance, the shots from Odegaard, those shots came from central areas where, because of interpositional movement in place, you draw defenders out, and then now you have to find spaces in between. If you look at Alvarez, he had to do a lot of covering, and because Arsenal were pretty much playing the ball out wide, it gave him room to be able to do what he had to do. And for me, he was the man of the match. But going to Fulham, this is actually the best time to go to Fulham.
They are not in a good place.
I think after 2 5-0 back-to-back wins, they've lost 3 on the trot, conceding 8 without scoring. So if you are Arsenal, this is actually a very good time to travel there. I think they've won at Fulham for their last 12 visits or so. They're unbeaten there. So you just need to go there and impose your will. And Arsenal have won just 1 in their last 4. And if you are going to better what you did last season, if you want to be called a league contender and not a pretender, these are some of the games you would have to win. You didn't expect them to lose against West Ham. Yes, the odd draw against Liverpool is very hard to win at Anfield, but if you are going to Fulham, and especially when you want to respond with the way you lost, they'll need to do something. They'll need to be more effective. For me, Saka has also not been too impressive in his last 3 or 4 games. Looks like he's... And I think generally Arsenal are not scoring enough. I think their highest scorer is Nketiah.
Yeah,
it's
5 goals.
Saka and
I think 5 each.
I don't think it's enough.
I read this story. I read this quote attributed to Gary Neville talking about the fact that he said that Saka, Martinelli, Gabi Jesus not combining enough was a problem, and if Arsenal didn't rectify it, they would pay.
You see, when he says not combining enough, we saw this same trio combining the whole of last season, and they were very good at it.
I think I was talking about the fact that they haven't clicked this season.
You see, I feel like partly Odegaard's absence, because Odegaard seems to have dipped, and he's now back, and if you watch yesterday's game, let me just give a touch shortly on the game. In as much as Arsenal didn't score, they should have scored in that game. You can't take anything away from how well drilled West Ham were. You watch West Ham's defense, they don't even go in for tackles. What they tried doing was squeezing spaces. So if Odegaard gets the ball, there are 2-3 players around preventing him from taking a shot. They don't launch him for the tackles. You'd expect Arsenal to face these tests and challenge. They faced that all season. They faced same last season. But they were able to triumph during that. And you ask yourself, what exactly is happening? You see, the thing is this. It doesn't matter how many times they combine. If you have an arrowhead who is not a defensive striker, who is just an arrowhead, because teams like Manchester City faced this same test all the time. I remember City against Leicester last season. Leicester were camped in their box the whole of that game. But players like Erling Haaland found a way to score with the little bit of opportunity they got. And I think that's the same thing that was happening. They tend to depend on the likes of Declan Rice this season to come in from the midfield to score. And yes, because you look at players like Saka, Martinelli, they are not that old too. They are very young players. a player like Saka has been utilized like the way Pedri has been utilized. So they are going to have moments like this, and it's understandable. But it's the football business, and you are trying to win the Premier League against a Manchester City side that has won like 3 trophies in a season. So it's the expectations will be high, and so in as much as you'd want to blame the trio for not combining, you have to ask yourself questions about why even Saka is the one who is getting most goals, or Martinelli. What's the number 9 doing? What's the arrowhead supposed to do in this?
Interesting. So let me bring you in. I tweeted something and I mentioned you last night that in relation to Gabriel Jesus. So now, what does Mikel Arteta do? Arsenal need to respond very quickly to the episode at the Emirates against West Ham. They go to Fulham, and like we've said, Fulham are in a very horrible place. They are not playing well. But if you were Fulham, would you look at yesterday's performance and take some consolation that if we are drilled or as well drilled as West Ham were, they could probably run away with the points? Can that happen? And on the reverse, what do Arsenal do to sharpen that front line if they will start getting lots more than they are getting in the league?
Well, for me, the way I see it, like we said, Fulham are in bad form. I just don't see them being able to get results, because if we are being very, very honest, last game that they got the 2-2 is one of those games that if we can categorize it as a game Arsenal threw away. They created enough to win. Yeah. They didn't take their chances. So for me, I don't see Fulham as a credible threat, because if you are lucky to get a result the first time, it doesn't mean that the second time you really show something off, and then now you're in bad form. It should be an easy win for Arsenal. They should be able to get their confidence back. But Safo made a very good point. There's not enough goals. You have Nketiah and Saka with 5 goals each. But, in open play, Saka has only 3 goals. Yeah. And you talk about Gabriel Jesus, he has 2-3 goals. Declan Rice has 3, and I think Jesus has 2. Martinelli has 2. So the 4 players are not doing what they're supposed to. They're supposed to score. They're supposed to deliver. Mm-hmm. And it's very unfortunate because they had Martinelli and Odegaard delivering a lot of goals last season. We are not seeing this season. Because both players scored 15 goals each last season. Okay. And this season, we are not really seeing them get into the goals. That's a problem. You have Saka, who also got in the teens last season. He doesn't seem to be on the same pace. Because remember, we played 19 games. So if we played 19 games, Odegaard and Martinelli should be around 7-8 if they are to equal last season. Mm-hmm. Saka should be maybe on 6-7 to get into that range. If Gabriel Jesus has 2, it means you are telling me that the whole season you get 4. That's not good enough. I mean, we all know football doesn't work like that. It's not about extrapolation and statistics and trends. Things can build up. You can get into form, but it should just tell you how poor they've been this first half of the season in terms of goals. I can understand that, okay, if they spread it out, Havertz is doing some here, this person is doing some here, but that reliable goal scorer, because look at Man City. In a pinch, they can look at Erling Haaland. Liverpool, in a pinch, they can look at Mo Salah. Mm-hmm. They have a player that they can. Who do you think Arsenal can look at in a pinch to get a goal? Wow. The player who's been most clutch, to use that word, I don't like that word in football, but that's not the point. But the clutch player we've seen this season seems to be Declan Rice. Because he got that goal against Man U. Mm-hmm. Then he also got the goal against Luton. So he seems to be the person coming up with goals. But that's not his job. He's there to break and pass. So the front line is just not getting things right. I think Arsenal are trying to win the league by being defensive, but I feel like they've overdone it. They've gone too far in one direction, and now the goals are suffering. So that's a problem for them. So I believe they are in a similar position to Chelsea. It just so happens that their defense is so much better than Chelsea's. That lack of chances is not being highlighted. Chelsea are not very solid defensively, just to go back, and they are creating chances. But Arsenal they are not finishing. And that's what will cause them, because this title race is by the margins. Mm-hmm. Because you have Man City who are having probably their worst season in about 3-4 years. And they are still in the mix. They're still in the mix. Not far off at all. They are not far off at all. Yes, therefore they take, and Arsenal are not able to kind of push on it. And it's very disappointing, because from what I've seen for most of the 19 games this season, I would say Arsenal have been the best team, despite their challenges. Because I think their patterns are there, the defensive solidity is there. There's some close games that should have been won, they didn't win. And it's interesting because those close games, they won them last season, because they basically lost 10 points from this stage last season. They would have, so at this point, they have what? Is it 40
That's
points
40 points.
right now.
No,
Yeah,
right
last
now,
season
no,
they
right
had
now, I think they have, the difference is not
right now
much.
they
It's
have
about just 3 or 4
About to,
points
yeah.
from last season at the
season
same
they had
stage.
last season they had 50 at this point. That's disappointing because we saw them last year. Like, oh, these people are trying, and then this season's like they are not able to keep up the momentum. It's disappointing. But look, I still believe they have a very good chance of winning the title if they're able to work some 1 or 2 things out. I believe that they are still favorites for me. I'm backing Arsenal still for the title, but
Okay.
because I believe that these fixes are not too drastic, they can be made.
Okay, all right, we'll see. It's Fulham versus Arsenal at Craven Cottage. That's happening over the weekend.